Okay, I'll call to order the Planning Commission regular meeting of September 26th. And do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
And thirded.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Okay, and that passed. And approval of minutes. Do we have any corrections?
They were pretty well written for the parts that I looked at.
I didn't have anything, did you?
Oh my gosh.
I thought
Randy?
they did a very good job this week.
Believe it or not, I have several. On line 250,
Okay.
this actually had to do with Randy, and it says Randy Plaisance noted it appeared to him that the city wanted to allow taking a storage container. And I was wondering if you meant city council and they dropped that, or if you have a chance to take a look at that.
Oh, I see what you mean, yeah.
I would submit that one back for review from the actual video
Okay,
to get the actual quote.
and I didn't have time to look at the video, but we'll, Mr. Berg, how do we do that
You
then?
can hold this over till next month for approval. We can highlight the other changes and I can go ahead and verify that one. And we
Okay.
can approve both
Okay,
previous month and this month's next month.
okay. And then on line 408, it said that motion passes, and I think that motion failed. It was about, it was on one of the motions where we were wanting to approve the amendment, request by Council Member Miller, adding the attached accessory structure. And this one was the one, there was a addition of a 5-acre minimum on that. Anyways, so it says that motion passes, and then it said the motion failed. So I think it should have been the motion, that motion failed, and then motion failed 3-4.
I'll verify that one as well.
Good
Okay.
catch. I think that's-
And then, on line 646, it says Plaisance stated it was his understanding of the comprehensive plan was that it was merely a guideline to sue when they were considering how they wanted to do a development in the city. I think it was, I think it should be just used, that's what it was, to use instead of sue.
Yep. Good catch.
I have no objection to that
Okay,
change.
because you didn't want to sue. All right,
But you're right, that was not the statement.
okay. Any other changes?
Madam Chair, just have someone make a motion to table and we will bring those up.
Okay, so would someone make a motion to table these minutes until we have
I'll
a
make a
chance to-
motion to table the meeting minutes until the next meeting so that we can verify corrections to the meeting minutes.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
And all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, and that passed. And the next agenda item is a public hearing variance request for 185 something, 3rd Street Northeast, Oak Grove. And we start with the public hearing?
I'll give the presentation first.
Okay.
You guys can feel free to answer or ask any questions. We can move then into the public hearing and make a decision from there. Trying to find the location map here for everyone's reference. Here we are. All right. This action is to consider a variance request for a frontage lot line reduction of the right-of-way for a potential administrative subdivision in the city of Oak Grove. This property is located in the city of Oak Grove, abutting the Bear Hollow subdivision in the rural residential zone of East Bethel. The property is approximately 40 acres and is located adjacent to the right-of-way of 3rd Street Northeast. The applicant is looking to subdivide the property and build 2 single-family homes. The City of Oak Grove has advised the applicant that permission from the City of East Bethel would be required prior to moving forward with a subdivision application. East Bethel City Code, I won't cite the code there, for rural residential development regulations require that a minimum lot width of 200 feet at the city public right-of-way. That is for the City of East Bethel. The applicant's parcel has 105.88 feet of frontage on 3rd Street Northeast, the right-of-way for East Bethel, and he is requesting a variance to the standard of 200 feet of frontage to a reduction of 52 feet in order to subdivide the property, allowing for 2 access points or driveways through the East Bethel 3rd Street right-of-way onto the parcel in Oak Grove. Our statute regarding variances, the Planning Commission shall recommend approval of any variance application unless it finds that a failure to grant the variance will result in practical difficulties on the applicant, and as may be applicable, all of the following hardship criteria have to be met. To hear requests for variances from the literal provisions of the ordinance in instances where the strict enforcement would cause practical difficulties because of the circumstances unique to the individual property under consideration, and to grant such variances only when it is demonstrated that such actions will be in keeping with the spirit and the intent of the ordinance. Practical difficulties, as used in connection with the granting of variances, means that the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner, not permitted by official control, to the plight of the landowner is due to the circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner, and the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. Economic considerations alone do not constitute a practical difficulty. Consideration of a variance requires the Planning Commission consider the 3-factor test for practical difficulty. The first factor is a test of reasonableness, which means that the landowner would likely use the property in a practical way, but cannot do so under the rules of the ordinance. It does not mean that the land could not be put to reasonable use whatsoever without the variance. For example, if a variance application was for a building too close to a lot line or does not meet the required setback, the focus on the first factor is whether the request to place the building there is reasonable. In this case, with only 105.88 feet of frontage on 3rd Street, the East Bethel right-of-way connected to the parcel, it would be reasonable for a reduction from the 200-foot standard. The second factor is the landowner's problem is due to circumstances unique to the property and not caused by the landowner. The uniqueness generally relates to the physical characteristics of the piece of property, that is, to the land and not the personal characteristics or preferences of the landowner. When considering the variance for a building encroaching or intruding into a setback, the focus of this factor is whether there is anything physically unique about the particular piece of property, such as sloping topography or other natural features of wetlands or trees. In this case, the property is unique in that not only does it have an existing right-of-way no existing right-of-way from the Oak Grove side, it's also bisected diagonally by wetlands, which limit its access. The third factor is that the variance would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. This factor is used to consider whether the resulting structure will be out of scale, out of place, or otherwise inconsistent with the surrounding area. For example, when thinking about a variance for an encroachment into a setback, the focus is how the particular building will look closer to a lot line and if it fits in the character of the area. In this case, due to the city boundary and the wetlands throughout the adjacent subdivision of Bear Hollow, there are numerous irregular shaped lots with varying lot frontages, including cul-de-sac lots with reduced front lot lines. Staff is requesting the Planning Commission hold a public hearing, review the prepared resolutions for approval or denial, and make a recommendation of approval or denial to the City Council for a variance from the standard of frontage at the right-of-way for the property located at 185 undetermined 3rd Street Northeast with the conditions in the attached resolution. The attachments are an approval resolution, a denial resolution, and then I also included a survey provided by the applicant of the proposed subdivision. The developer is here too. I'm assuming he would like to speak during the public forum or the public hearing portion of the variance request.
Okay, thank you. So then we open the public hearing now?
That's correct.
So I did forget to mention that if anyone wants to speak tonight, please make sure that your name is on the piece of paper. After you're done speaking, you could come up and do that. So please, if you'd like to come and address the commission, please come up now.
And state their name and address.
What's that? Yeah. Oh, yeah, and when you begin to speak, if you please state your name and address.
If you want to start at the top of the list and work your way down, that way you can ensure that everybody who's signed up has an opportunity. If they choose
Okay.
not to, you've at least covered all those names. You already have. Yep, so if you want to speak, right there, yep. Yep.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dave Wills. I'm the landowner over there.
Dave, we're gonna need you to speak into that microphone so that
Oh,
it
okay.
can
Can
be
you hear me?
heard. There we go.
So what I'm trying to do is split this off into 2 5-acre lots. The land kind of divides itself naturally into 2 lots there. That's why we're looking at it that way. I work with a builder, and we would be building 2 high-end homes with price homes. That's what my plan is, I guess. So we would probably meet any covenants or surpass any covenants that you have in Bear Hollow. I've built in Bear Hollow with Meadowview a few years ago, so I know what their covenants are and stuff, but I'd be willing to match that, I guess. So, and the reason I'm just doing 2 lots and not running all the way through is, to be honest with you, I really like the land, the other part, you know, and you'd literally be kind of destroying it almost to put a road in that way, and you'd be crossing 2 wetlands areas. It's probably doable, you know, have a cul-de-sac in that, you know, across. You guys know where I'm talking about? Like, right, you could do a cul-de-sac if you cross the wetlands there, but you'd be changing the land quite a bit, kind of, so. And then one of the reasons too would be, rather than doing a cul-de-sac coming in from there, you could do 3 lots with a cul-de-sac coming in. That would be in effect a road going in, and it would be a whole nother, you know, thing, I guess. But that, the plows would have to go all the way around for that, from Oak Grove. So I guess that's it. So thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
If you could please come up to the microphone
Do I go back
and
down
state
there?
state your name, please.
I want to address it to him. My name is Brad Clyden. We're at 421 3rd Street. In the plans that were sent around to all the neighborhood, it shows your 2 lots, and I don't have a problem with that. But what I'm seeing behind it is a street in there and other lots behind it. So do you have plans to develop behind those 2 homes and put in a street there?
That shouldn't be on there. That's not a plan right now at all.
Is that gonna be something, is that gonna be something in the future?
There's a possibility, you know, I can't say no, because I don't know. You know?
I mean, I get it, it's your
I
land.
love the land, you guys, seriously, I love it. It's really like, I plan on handing it down, you know, to generations, kind of, you know, like a kid's hunting there and stuff right now. But, so that was the original plan. And that was, we were gonna take a cul-de-sac, so this right here was gonna go across where these trees are and stuff. And then, either go all the way through, and that would make, you could do 3 lots here, or end in a cul-de-sac, depending on what happened. this is not an immediate plan. I can't say it would never happen, but that's not on my plate. So but that was the original one. Sharper Homes was actually, gonna purchase this about probably 4 years ago. And they had this, so I was working off of that plan. That should just not be on there. That's not part of it.
So what are we voting for today? Just these two
Just that,
lots?
this is not part of that at all.
So this would be something in the future that we'd have to have a meeting on and agree upon. You're only looking for these two lots.
This isn't really going across though or anything.
No, I get all that.
Yeah, so this is Oak Grove. This wouldn't have anything to do.
Well, but I guess my concern is, these two lots, you know, we've talked to quite a few of our neighbors, and they don't have an issue with the two lots.
Yeah.
But in the future, if you decide to develop that, where is that road gonna come out? Is that gonna come out into Bear Hollow? So now we have, you know, it could be anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15
I
homes. if you
understand,
put
yeah, I
that there.
understand your concern. Actually, I never thought of that. There's, okay, one of the plats that I had, it went out, okay, let me look for a sec here.
Sounds like it's not.
Yeah, it went out along here, one of the lots here, this is where that horse barn is and stuff.
Mhm.
They had a stub going up there, Oak Grove had that, I don't even know exactly why, because you'd have to buy it from you have to buy that $850,000 home to do it, you know what I mean?
Yep.
I've never seen plans, I don't know why he has this on here, I wish he would. That's not a plan, you guys. It truly isn't, like, that's not that doesn't even make sense.
Okay.
Like, you know what I mean, that doesn't make sense, why would you?
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my original
Yeah.
question. It's only the two lots that you're proposing right now?
Only 2 lots, and there'll be big houses on both.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want?
Okay, so, when, everyone will get a chance to speak.
Should I
And
go
Brett,
sit down, or?
yeah, why don't you sit down, and I can write the list of questions then.
Okay.
And Brad, did you have a chance to sign
did
the?
not, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right,
Good evening.
hello.
Kurt Nelson, 18553 3rd Street Northeast. I just wondered, I've got several questions, but one of them is that, is there been precedent set on anything like this in the past? Have we had to give a variance to anything from East Bethel going into like Oak Grove or another city like this?
Do we want to
And-
take down the list of
Yeah,
questions
I'm
and I
gonna
can
take,
come back
I'm gonna
and
take all the
answer?
questions
Yeah.
and then, the people that know the answers will answer them all. And do you have any other
Yes.
questions?
I do. If the variance is denied, can a single entrance to the property be used for both parcel A and parcel B? Can you go in on one driveway and split?
Okay. We
Is
will
that a
ask that.
possibility?
We'll ask that.
And is it a possibility that, does he already have the right for one driveway to go in there now without any variance at all?
Sure, it's his property.
Is that correct? You say he does have
No.
access to
No,
that?
that's
Oh, he
not
doesn't
correct.
That's not
because of
East
our-
Bethel property or anything right there?
So I'll be happy to answer all of them.
Okay.
Let's get them all written down and then I can answer each one of them individually.
All right.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So, because each parcel is approximately 5.5 acres each, you know, could you take a parcel and subdivide it after he gets approval to go in there? So, I mean, that would be a question, I guess, for Oak Grove more than East Bethel, from what I can determine. But is it a possibility that happening? You go in there, okay, yeah, you can have 2 driveways, and all of a sudden, you got 2 driveways, and then they split off, and you got 4 parcels instead of 2.
So you're asking if
I
the,
mean, that's
if-
a concern.
you're asking if the 5 acre parcel could be split into
And
2.5 or
acres.
2 or 3 or whatever?
Yes. You know, how would the granting the variance benefit East Bethel? I don't think there is any benefit at all to East Bethel, obviously. We wouldn't increase the tax base. We'd have to move snow and general road maintenance for an Oak Grove residents. We'd have, during construction on Jackson, Valhalla, 3rd Street, all those would take a beating for construction traffic. You've got, obviously, tree removal, grading work, foundation digging, concrete work, building, septic, well drilling, et cetera, the list goes on. Because of that, who's gonna pay for the resurfacing of those streets because of that construction traffic? I mean, there's no doubt about it. Right now, the potholes are filled. We've got cracks that have been filled in the road. So if there's cracks that have been filled in that road already, there's obviously a detriment for more construction traffic to come into that area. Those are just some of the questions I have, and if you could answer those, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And your name again was Kurt? Oh, I got it. Okay, thank you. Yep, we have everything we need. Thank you. Pat Duncanson, are you wanting to come up?
I think he just asked everything I needed to ask.
Okay, so ditto. Okay, and Les? No, you're good? Okay. Paul Karpinski? Alrighty.
On the East Bethel side, how about emergency services?
Could you state your name?
Paul
We have a
Karpinski.
We have a transcriptionist that needs to.
All right, yeah. Would emergency services be supported by Oak Grove then? Being that as an Oak Grove address,
Okay.
would be a question. And then kinda on that utility, same question there. Will East Bethel support that piece of it as well? And I like the question, what's the value for East Bethel if
Okay.
it's not a resident of East Bethel? That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. And Andrea Nelson? You got it? Okay, good. And then Brian? Perfect. I think that's it of the people that signed up. And shall we go through the list of
If you-
questions? And I think Mr. Berg is going to be answering a
You
lot of
can
them.
either close the public hearing or we can keep it open in case any other questions come up. That's completely your choice.
Okay, I think I'd like to keep it open.
Very good.
And then this way.
All right. A couple of items that I can address probably an answer in the same question, or the same answer. East Bethel Fire and Oak Grove Fire have a mutual aid agreement. So if these homes were built and there was an emergency call there, both Oak Grove and East Bethel would be responding simultaneously until Oak Grove arrives and calls East Bethel off, is my understanding. But yes, East Bethel would be responding because of that location. They both mutually aid, respond to each other's order calls. Okay? Come on up and
Good.
let us know.
And
You are right that
could you just restate your name, please?
Paul Karpinski again.
For the minutes.
You got it. So if we do get a mutual aid call, if there is a structure fire, it auto aids and it does call, all cities local here. If it's a medical call, that wouldn't be the case. But Oak Grove, they would respond, they work with Alina too, but that would be a long trip to come all the way around from their station off of Viking. Something to think about there. But a structure fire, you're right, it is mutual aid.
So, go ahead.
Okay, to answer the question regarding driveways, multiple driveways, single driveway, access, the only control at this point that East Bethel has is of the right-of-way at 105.88 feet. So the variance conceivably could be for a reduction from 200 feet to 105.88, and we could permit one access. The applicant is requesting two accesses on 105.88 feet, so if you divide that in half, it's 52 point, whatever the math comes out to be.
So in other words, if I might just add on to that, we would still have to approve a variance for just one driveway.
That's correct.
Since there's a 200 feet
Requirement
minimum
in
requirement
East Bethel.
for East Bethel.
That's correct.
Thank you.
My educated guess is 3rd Street 184th was not designed to give access to Oak Grove. It's just the way the geographic laid out here for this particular parcel. When I look at the plat for the Bear Hollow subdivision, there's no previous plan to provide access off of 3rd Street to any land in Oak Grove. In terms of anything that happens beyond the right-of-way in East Bethel is totally Oak Grove's call. We cannot control how that parcel gets divided up beyond our right-of-way. We do not permit multiple residents off the same driveway in East Bethel. If we were to grant one access through the right-of-way, whatever Oak Grove decides to give permissions for beyond our right-of-way is out of our control. So you could do a split driveway, they share the entrance. As it reaches Oak Grove city limits, it splits off into multiple driveways. That's out of our control. What we have control over is 105.88 feet of our right-of-way. I talked this over with the Public Works Director. Regardless of whether there are one driveway, two driveways, or no driveways, our snowplow is going to be going 184th and 3rd Street. We're necessarily not losing anything by allowing 2 more accesses into Oak Grove by having the snowplow run by there. It's going by there anyway. The question about if there had been a similar scenario the other way around, so let's just say, is there anything that East Bethel benefits from that goes through Oak Grove? There are a couple of examples north of this location in which we do have a shared portion of University that our Public Works Department plows. I believe it's the north portion of University, and Oak Grove plows the south part of University. We both own half the lane. So we share an agreement that way. If you look up north here, I'm gonna get my bearings here, figure out exactly where we're at. This subdivision of East Bethel can only be accessed by going through Oak Grove. And there are probably 20 plus homes in this subdivision that can only get to their home by going through Oak Grove and using an Oak Grove street. On the north end of the city up on University, I mentioned that before, there is some shared access, but here's another example where our residents are using portions of Oak Grove to get to East Bethel. Although there are other ways around, it does make a connection here to also get in using University side to get into East Bethel. So that scenario is not unique. I don't know if any variances were required in either of those 2 subdivisions. That was long before I made it to East Bethel.
Aaron, can I just point out the fact that University Avenue is a shared street? So there shouldn't have been any reason to request a variance off of University because we own half the street anyway.
Sure.
So that would not have gone to, for instance, Oak Grove to approve because it's, again, part of a shared boundary. We own half the street.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. I do know this subdivision, for instance, is coming off of what looks to be Butternut or 205th. If you look at the original plat that was filed when the subdivision was filed, you will see that there was an intended extension coming from Oak Grove into East Bethel. There was no access planned in any other direction, according to this plat, from, Trying to find the year here. 1977. So that would be what I would prescribe as the difference between the Bear Hollow neighborhood is the plat there doesn't show the intention of a connection to a different city, where this one does show an intention coming back from Oak Grove to East Bethel. In terms of the wetland described bisecting the property, let me get you back to that. And I am lost.
You go south from there,
South.
other way, yep.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Although our East Bethel map doesn't continue into Oak Grove, you can see the tip of the wetland here, the outline as it comes down here, and then it leads into some state land, I believe, down below there. So this portion of the property is the only portion, which leads me to believe that unless the developer is willing to spend a lot of money to fill in the wetlands, I don't think this globe will be able to be subdivided, but I do not know Oak Grove's lot standards. My assumption is, knowing how septic systems work and knowing how the state regulates septic systems, I don't think they're gonna be able to subdivide below 2 acres on the Oak Grove side. We wouldn't allow that on the East Bethel side. I think Oak Grove's in a very similar scenario. So the fear of that being divided into 5 or 6 or multiples, I don't think is a viable option unless the developer is willing to spend money and fill in the wetlands, which is fairly expensive.
And several of the questions was about the construction traffic on the roads and like who would be liable for that or have to pay for it.
In terms of road cleanup, that's East Bethel's responsibility. We would have a little bit of stake in asking the construction company to do some cleanup, but ultimately we're gonna be the ones responsible for that road, including repair and maintenance.
In your opinion, from what you've seen so far, can there be a lot of damage from the construction traffic?
This is just 2 single-family residences. I don't know that there's gonna be a lot of land clearing or a lot of earth moving. I don't know the company that he's going to use. I don't know their procedures and their standards, but ultimately with wear and tear on anything, extra heavy traffic provides, wear and maintenance sooner than it should with regular traffic.
Can we keep the public hearing open in case any of the commissioners have a question for the landowner?
Sure.
Okay. Are there any other questions that you can see on your list that need to be answered?
No.
Okay. So, commissioners, does anybody have any questions for the landowner? No?
Thank you.
No? Okay, then, I think I'll just give one more chance for somebody to come up and speak if they'd like to. And please state your name and address.
Andrea Nelson, 18553 3rd Street. So this may be a more aesthetic comment, I guess. There are lovely trees across the street. I live right across where this property will be developed. And I'm sure a lot of those trees will be taken down, which will change the aesthetic of the neighborhood, I think. Also, those driveways, or a driveway, whatever ends up being there, conceivably, the lights from those driveways will immediately impact at least 2 houses there. So, as far as I can tell, the other homes in the neighborhood, they've been set up intentionally with offset driveways, so that isn't an occurrence. But in this case, these driveways would be directly facing our homes.
Okay.
So that's kind of a concern because that could be an annoyance.
That is a concern with
Yeah.
a lot of them.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Okay, and I forgot what was the other question I was gonna ask. I think you answered most of those, so, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Dave, would you like to come up again and answer any questions, or? And you don't have to if you don't want to. I just want,
No, it's fine.
you have the opportunity if you wanted to.
Yeah, I got, a couple ideas on some of the things that were stated.
Okay. And if you could please again state your name and address.
Dave Wills, I'm the landowner. So I don't think, Oak Grove has got a 2.5 acre minimum, and they don't allow split driveways either without a variance. My plans are, and I guess I don't know how that would work, but it would be just two lots. If there's a way to, make sure that that's understood and accepted, if anything gets accepted, that's what they would be. What we're doing is trying to do pretty high-end homes. They're gonna be nestled back in the trees. They're not, it's a pretty good plan, I think, for probably $1 million homes, I'm guessing, They're really expensive now. And I have 2 homes in the parade of homes, so if anybody wants to look at what we would be building, they're 153 and 155. They're right in Ham Lake and Andover. So I'm not pitching the builder, I just want you to see what we would build. And that's our standards, and these would be both upgraded from that. We're not gonna split it into 2.5 acre lots. We're not doing any of that because they don't really support it with the septic, There's 5 acres, but there's a lot of wetlands you can see on there. So you have to have a primary and a secondary septic, and it wouldn't fit on there from what I can see. That's not the plan, so. Any questions?
If you
You'd
could
have to
please
come up.
come up to the mic, please.
Sorry.
And if you could please state your name and your address.
Pat Kivy, 18497 3rd Street. I just had a question. When is this gonna all start?
Could you speak into the microphone, please, so we can
When
hear?
is this all gonna start?
Probably the spring. It would probably be in the spring or something. I haven't got it approved by Oak Grove. They're gonna approve it most likely. That's why I'm here. Told me to get, these specials, graces on it first, but, it'd probably be in the spring.
Okay, Dave, if you could come back to the microphone too.
It would be in the spring.
Yeah, thank you. And one of the concerns about a lot of these types of things is the headlights coming into other people's homes.
Yeah.
Have you thought of that?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I can sugarcoat that. I don't know what to say, you know what I mean? There are gonna be driveways coming off the houses. I honestly don't, you know what I mean? Like, if somebody proposes a solution, I'd look at it,
Okay.
Both the driveways come straight out, there's only 55 feet for each one to work with, so. I don't know if I have an answer for that. We are trying to put them in the woods though. That's all, that's oak savanna, big, huge red oaks and white oaks and stuff. That's part of the feel is to nestle, and they're both gonna be ramblers probably, big, kind of like ranch houses or whatever. So what we're trying to do is sneak them back in here so they're both, the building pads are not right next to the roads on these.
Okay. Well, thank you.
I'm not sure if that helps, but.
If you'd like to say something, please come up.
My name is Les Kivy, and I'm at 18497 3rd Street Northeast. I don't know, anytime you're gonna be disturbing these oak trees, we've already got enough oak wilt going through our neighborhood now that we're losing oak trees, every year. And you go in there and just start pulling driveways in there and in these other trees and cutting some down. To me, it's just detrimental to the aesthetics of the neighborhood. And I just try to preserve as many oak trees as we can, is what I'm concerned about, so.
Okay. Thank you.
I was a forester for the city of Egan for 7 years. I went through all the oak wilt back in the 80s, or not 80s, yeah, late 80s and early 90s. You know, I'm not gonna say, about 90% of it's caused by damage, you know, or that's how 90% of it starts by damage to an oak tree. I'm not gonna say we're not gonna damage them. There's white oaks and red oaks there's both. Probably equal, I don't remember exactly, but there's definitely white oaks too, because they have the little acorns and stuff right now. But I'm not sure on that one either, because that's part of building is you're gonna clear the lot. You gotta put the house somewhere, you know. Of course, we wanna save the trees, that's the idea. You know, my degree is in natural resource management, so I care, but you're still building a house and it's gonna take a 100-foot wide pad, probably, something like that, you know, to do a big rambler, so. You're right, there's probably gonna be some damage. We've come a long way with, you know, stopping oak wilt from spreading, but I'm not gonna say you won't hurt some.
Brian Perschbacher, 18531 3rd Street. This construction work would go on both driveways. All the construction work would be right directly across from our driveway. So it's going to be a lot of added congestion just during the construction time, let alone having the added driveways and the traffic going back and forth in there. So this is going to be it really takes away from the appeal of the neighborhood, why we came there to begin with. And so it's a concern. It's going to be a concern for my family. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay. Okay. I'm okay.
Get one more.
Okay.
She remembered her question.
Yeah.
I don't have a question for you. Andrea Nelson again. I just have a question on what is the procedure now? Do you make a recommendation to the city of East Bethel and then that's voted on by them, or what is that process, either yay or nay, or how that's
You
going to
stated
work?
it exactly.
Okay.
So we're when everyone has had a chance to speak, and sometimes that takes a long time, and I think it's really important for everybody to get the chance to say what they want to say. So then we'll close the public hearing, and then the commissioners will talk among ourselves, and then we'll make a recommendation to the city council, and then this will go to city council with a report of what we recommended, and then they actually have the final authority to approve it or not.
And when is that usually decided on? At the next meeting, or when does that taken up?
Do you know, Aaron, when the next one will be?
You guys make a decision tonight. It will be in 2 weeks. Let me look at my calendar here.
It's not the 2nd, so then maybe the one after that.
Say the 9th?
I think the 9th.
The 9th. October 9th.
Yep, thank you. Okay, with that, oh, we have one more? Okay.
Kurt Nelson. Just needs clarification, whether it's, you need a variance, do I understand that correctly? He needs a variance for either one or two driveways? Either one or the other, is that correct? Okay. And then, as I understand it then, after that variance is given, depending on which one it is, or if any, then it would be, we have no longer, East Bethel has no longer any say on what happens over on those two parcels. It's all will grow from there on in.
Aside from
Is that correct?
aside from approving a $52 driveway permit, we are done.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Well, with that, we're going to close the public hearing. And I'd like to, a motion, someone would make a motion to open the discussion.
I'll make a motion to open discussion.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any comments?
My main concerns are that addition of 2 properties. I'm sure they'll be really nice, but East Bethel won't be able to collect any taxes because it's out of our jurisdiction. Additionally, consumption of city services without any type of compensation, I think, would be subsidization of Oak Grove and Oak Grove properties. Something I guess I don't feel is fiscally responsible. Also, the emergency services, while fire is joint between Oak Grove and East Bethel, I do see some issues with potentially consumption of sheriff resources. Also, the distance that EMS will have to go to get to this property is really far. You're basically going up to Viking and then coming back down to enter this development, or further down to Constance. It just seems like it might be, emergency services will fall upon East Bethel. Also, the addition of 2 houses to an existing neighborhood that wasn't expecting development, I think might be just wrong, just on the part of the neighborhood. I did have a question for Aaron regarding easements and buffer zones. I guess in the past when we've talked about buffer zones along roads and easements, like who's responsible for those? Like, I have an easement, a road easement in front of my house. Is that, do I not need to maintain that? Do I have no rights to that easement?
The easement is yours to some degree. You would provide the city and or a utility company the right to go into the ground or across overhead to do utility work. A right-of-way, which is the side of the road, is city. So we would maintain the right-of-way, or the local municipal or the local unit of government would maintain the shoulder of the road or the right-of-way. So in this case, it's probably a ditch. We probably have, I don't know what the right-of-way distance is. It's probably 33 feet from the center line on both sides of the road. So it's probably 66 feet wide, if that's what's on the map. So probably a 30-foot road surface and then 3 feet of shoulder, if you will.
It's about 15 feet from the road to the Oak Grove. I measured it on GIS. It looks pretty, there's a pretty big gap there.
My assumption is our right-of-way reaches from the road to the city limit line in this case, if you follow the radius.
Okay.
This would be our right-of-way, area of responsibility. Just like across the street, this is our road right-of-way.
Aaron, I have a couple questions. Well, one question, 2 ways. Is there any way that the access could come from Oak Grove at all? And have the property buildable?
Staff's opinion, and I've had a conversation with the developer, that there could potentially be a path from Oak Grove through this wetlands across the high ground to potentially reach that lobe of property on the other side of the wetlands. I did have a conversation with Anoka County Soil and Water, and they indicated that this wetland is not classified as such that it couldn't be filled. The developer would have to purchase wetland credit based on how much fill is going to be needed to get across that peninsula and island, if you will, to make the connection happen.
So that would be like one long driveway or 2 long driveways from Oak Grove?
If you entertain me for just 1 second, I did propose a hypothetical for the developer that could potentially, maybe I got rid of it. I do not have it. Let me bring up a aerial. On this parcel, this section here is on a survey identified as non-wetland. It's like an island, if you will. There is a peninsula here, and then there's a little lobe that sticks out on this side that's not in the delineated wetland. Potentially, with the right amount of finance, this could be filled in across the island to connect to the peninsula to provide access. I'm not an engineer. I don't know how much fill it's gonna take. I don't know how much that's gonna cost. That is a potential path. As you can see, there are tracks there when these pictures were taken of crossings. But that leads to a longer stretch for the developer to get to those two homes, having to come from two 40-acre parcels away in Oak Grove's right-of-way.
Yeah.
The developer does own both of these 40-acre parcels. And it does appear that there is been access here at some point through this farmstead, which could potentially then lead to where it's crossing here to get to this section. All of these are very hypothetical scenarios without any engineering, so.
So, and then the other part of my question was just about the, if he had the 200 feet, there would not need to be a variance at all. We wouldn't be having this hearing, right? He'd just be.
That's
building
correct. He
out.
would apply for a driveway permit and
Mhm.
we would review it as if anyone was applying for a driveway access permit off of our own city street. And that would be up to planning or the planning zoning approval and the public works director to review whether a culvert is needed or not.
Do any of the other properties in Bear Hollow have a shorter frontage than 200 feet?
Only in the cul-de-sacs. This property here, definitely. This one. This one for sure.
One of the qualifications for granting a variance is that it has to do with the reasonable use of the property. And if we were to grant a variance for one driveway that would allow reasonable use of the property, the developer wanting two lots there, even though is feasible, but we're not, if we don't grant a variance for two driveways, we're not keeping him from a reasonable use of the property. We're just not accommodating his desire for that particular piece. So even though I'm not even clear whether we should or not, but there's a big difference between going from 200 feet to 52 feet versus 104 or 108 or whatever it was for one driveway. So that's my thought about that.
And if that
part.
was the case, then he could go to Oak Grove and ask for a variance for a split driveway too, right?
Right.
So the variance request in front of you is only for dividing that into two. There is not a variance request in front of you for making it one. The applicant is requesting two accesses. That's not stopping him from, if it were to be denied, coming back next month asking for one. There's no prohibition in that.
Sherry, what do you think?
You know, I'm torn. I mean, if that land was in East Bethel, the only thing that would change would be who's getting the property taxes. And we'd still be wrestling with the two driveways and the cars coming out of the driveways with the headlights aiming across the street in the houses that are already there. On the other hand, the property owner does have a right to use his property. It's really, these are hard decisions, you know. Yeah. Yeah.
Could you repeat earlier your guidance that suggested variances shouldn't just be granted based on economic considerations?
You want me to
I think it's
read the
section
whole
4.
paragraph?
You could just summarize the end.
The concluding statement in that paragraph is economic considerations alone do not constitute a practical difficulty.
Right.
And that is where we get to the point where, let me move up to my microphone. And that's where we get to the point of substantial reasons not to approve the variance. Because I respect that he wants to upgrade his property. The fact that he's in a different city, to me, does not and should not be a detriment to whether or not we would approve such a thing. However, the councilman's comment about the fact of economic reasonableness, and that should not be a factor, to me is the whole point of the fact that the only reason that we would be doing this variance, which would be touchy even if it was in East Bethel, is the fact that he could put in a road from the side of Oak Grove and develop out this property from that side. And so therefore, I understand that you know, the economic difference between the two is quite extreme. There still is that point that he could develop this property if he put a road in from Oak Grove side of the property, connecting those two 40-acre parcels and building a road to connect all those pieces. I would have a hard time with this, even if it was in a cul-de-sac, to be honest with you, to make two driveways literally side by side, coming off a smaller parcel than we would allow for just a single household. So for those two reasons, my feeling is that we should not grant the variance. And with all due apologies to Mr. Wells, because I appreciate that he's trying to upgrade his property, I just have a hard time that we were going to go ahead and do that for that reason.
This has been really one of the hardest ones that I've
It
been
is.
in the number of years I've been here, actually, because there's, you can see both sides, definitely. For me, you know, that they're in another city and they're going over a road, that is not important to me personally. I like people to be able to do what they want to do with their property. But Randy, as usual, is very eloquent and says how I'm feeling about it too. So,
I'd like to make a motion to deny the variance request.
is there a second?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that motion? I guess
I'd like to
sure
make
I
a
hear-
motion to deny the variance request.
Okay. I'll second the motion.
Okay. All in favor of the motion to deny the variance request, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Okay, and that, the motion to deny the variance, or our recommendation to the city council to deny the
Still
variance.
goes to city council in 2 weeks.
Right, yeah, this, again, this is just a recommendation.
Yes, you still have the opportunity to convince city council to change their minds.
Yeah, there is a public forum at the city council meetings also.
Aaron, could you just provide information about when the city council meeting is,
Yes,
when that will be
it
heard?
will be
October
7 p.m. on October 9th.
Exactly. Right. Okay, so, Mr. Terry, just asked me to clarify that if you do a public, you speak at the public forum, it'll just be a general public forum. There really isn't there is no more public hearing for this issue specifically. So just kind of understand what you're doing at the public forum. Okay, and then the next item on the agenda is our discussion of mobile food units, which took a lot longer than we thought it was going to last time. But do we need a motion to open this discussion?
We do not.
Okay.
This is merely for discussion on a proposal that the city council shall hear if you approve of the draft. As you know, Appendix A zoning, Section 1, in the general provisions of the East Bethel zoning ordinance permits food trucks to operate in our highway commercial, our central business, our light industrial, and our mixed-use districts. The code also provides the following definition. A mobile food unit is a food and beverage service establishment that is a vehicle-mounted unit, either motorized or trailered, and readily movable without disassembling for transport to another location. The unit can operate no more than 21 days annually at one place unless it is operated at the site of and in conjunction with a permitted business license under Minnesota statute, Chapter 157 and 28A. All mobile food units must operate in compliance with the Minnesota Food Code. Beyond the definition of the allowable zoning districts permitting operation, there are no defined parameters or licensing requirements for the operation of a mobile food unit within the city limits of East Bethel. At the July 25th, 2023 Planning Commission, staff brought forward a proposed mobile food vendor ordinance for review and conversation. An informal recommendation at the conclusion was to revise Article 5 of the Peddler Solicitor Ordinance to include mobile food vendors in the definition and add a state license requirement as well as research an appropriate permit fee. The list below is how other local units of government permit mobile food units to operate. Anoka County provides a 21-day license for $90. They do a background investigation on the owner as well as verify that the state licensing has been met. The city of Blaine requires that they register with the city. However, they do not do any background check. There is no permit fee. Their requirement is that they provide a copy of a valid Anoka County permit. The city of Cambridge has their uses defined into daily, monthly, and seasonal with differing dollar amounts and different time frames. The city of Isanti, a very similar breakdown. The city of Princeton has a breakdown. The city of St. Francis, as well as the city of Wyoming. Staff is recommending that adding the mobile food unit definition already defined in our zoning code to Article 5, peddlers and solicitors, Section 18-230. Additionally, requiring that mobile food units register and provide a copy of their valid state Minnesota license or Anoka County temporary food truck or trailer license to the city of East Bethel by amending Section 18-36. In conversations with city staff, our transient merchant and peddler application could be modified to have a checkbox that says I'm a mobile food vendor. They fill out the worksheet. They provide city staff a copy of their Minnesota catering license or their Anoka County 21-day permit, and they're allowed to operate in the city of East Bethel. We do not do a background check. We do not require an inspection. We do not regulate anything in terms of the actual licensing of it. That is all done by Anoka County. They can obtain an Anoka County 21-day permit online from our parking lot. They do not need to leave in order to get a copy of the Anoka County licensing. So my assumption in all of the research is that a 21-day permit matches what state statute has for mobile food units, which Anoka County adopted, which our food truck definition, which already existed in our zoning code, provides a 21-day time frame as well to operate. So our recommendation for the ability to require mobile food units in the city of East Bethel is that they supply the city a copy of their Anoka County or their state of Minnesota catering license or Department of Agricultural license and fill out the worksheet.
I liked it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I mean, that was a lot of work.
Thank you very much.
And you really clarified the things that we talked about last time in our hour-long, or 2-hour-long discussion on food trucks too. So thank you.
So a redlined version of the ordinance amendment suggestion is provided in the packet. You'll see there's 2 red lines, which essentially do that, move the definition of a mobile food unit into transient merchant and make the obligation to provide a copy of their licensing from either the state or Anoka County. It's simple as that.
So we're just asking them to provide their food safety stamp, basically.
Correct.
And we're not charging a fee like.
No
some-
fee. They pay all of the fee and do all of that at the Anoka County level. They just provide us proof that they've submitted to a compliance inspection and have a state license or a county permit.
And so if there ever is an issue, they'll call the state health inspector, or we'll call them, or somebody will call the state health inspector?
Prior to being issued a 21-day permit from the county, we would hope that they have provided proof to the county that they've passed a compliance inspection. This also would allow them to operate 21 days in any location in the Anoka County, unless the city has a higher standard in Anoka County. But they could operate in the townships or anywhere that Anoka County regulates. Alternatively to spending 21 days in East Bethel, they could go anywhere they're permitted in the county,
But then
including Blaine.
You also added a clause where they could be an extended time if they had an association with the business, correct?
If they're a brick and mortar business in our city that has a food truck and a catering license, they could operate in their own parking lot. We wouldn't require they comply with a food truck mobile food unit ordinance. If it is the brick and mortar and it is their company and they're serving their food in their own parking lot, would not make any sense to require them to have a mobile food unit.
So what about
licensing.
the taco truck in U Polar Parts?
So if and when the ordinance is passed, we will rate the required time frame, and we will visit with the taco truck or anyone who's operating in the city limits of East Bethel currently, advise them of the ordinance change and ask them to verify whether they have an Anoka County permit or not. If they do not, we will ask them to obtain an Anoka County permit to be in compliance with city ordinance.
Okay, but that would just be for 21 days though?
Correct.
21 calendar days or 21, 21 days? So I think they operate like 4, 5, 6 days a week, probably 5 days a week.
I'm looking at the Anoka County permit. I did provide a copy of the application in your packet. It says, food trucks or trailers can operate in Anoka County for 21 days or less the licensing year under the license classification associated with the application. It doesn't say 21 consecutive days. It says 21 days. I don't know how they handle that at the county level.
I'm wondering if the in conjunction with a permanent business is too vague. For example, why would the taco truck not be in conjunction with that business? Like, say, we want to have that taco truck there. How do you define if it's in conjunction with it, or?
It would have to be the same ownership under the same food or alcohol license.
But see, I have got the same question as Glenn, because I saw what you wrote there and I thought, well, then the taco truck can stay there if they have an association or an agreement with U Polar Parts or anybody else who would, they'd be in their parking lot.
So it's in conjunction with a permanent business licensed under Chapter 157. I could pull up state statute. I'm guessing that's food licensing.
Okay.
Catering license.
So that's what I didn't do. I didn't pull up that statute.
Chapter 157 governs the license and inspection of public food and beverage establishments, hotels, motels, lodging establishments, and resorts. So it would be in conjunction would be the restaurant, if you will, not the salvage yard having a license and then allowing the food truck there.
Okay.
Those are two separate business requirements.
So what if the U Polar Parts got a food license for some reason? For catering, or, kind of like, I think Blue Ribbon Pines probably does, right?
So in conjunction with outdoor entertainment permits, we have a separate approval process for private events with food trucks. This is for mobile food units that pull into town, pull into a parking lot and start operating. An outdoor entertainment permit is completely different than the mobile food unit. They're permitted under the outdoor entertainment permit, and there's a fee to the entire permit.
So the issue I have is limiting them to 21 days potentially. That food truck's pretty good. And a lot of people are starting to go there. So I just feel like as they continue to get more people going, they'll grow and then potentially buy that property next door and open it as a Mexican food restaurant. Whereas if we limit them to 21 days, they're just gonna get run out. So I like the idea of having a state food stamp, but the 21 day seems pretty restrictive, especially since they're there every day, and I know people are starting to go there. If they were closer to some of our other restaurants and potentially competing with them, I'd see maybe a reason to regulate, but that location is so far from anything, and the clientele that's going to that food truck, I don't think is competing with any of our other restaurants. I think if that food truck was there, those people just wouldn't even eat in our town, is my opinion. So I like the idea of knowing that they are food safe, but the 21 day limit, I think, seems a little too restrictive.
Yeah, I think that we can't, tailor an ordinance to the taco truck, even though they have wonderful tacos over there. So I think the discussion has to go over to everybody.
Right. We can't single them out. It's just, we need to have an ordinance. They need to abide by it. They can go away for a couple of days and then come back.
So state
Correct?
statute defines 21 days.
Right.
Anoka County defined 21 days, probably from state statute. If we require the Anoka County permit, that's 21 days. I don't see that it says 21 consecutive days.
Yeah.
So if they are there Monday through Friday, take the weekend off, come back for 5 more, you now extended it to almost 4 weeks. I don't know. This was the cleanest way for staff to be able to handle it as well, instead of doing background checks, licensing, collecting fees, revenue, keeping it on the books. All the regulation goes to Anoka County. We just verify that they've completed the food license portion, that they've been inspected, and we let them operate.
So for those cities that have seasonal licenses, they have to do more background checks themselves.
The city
beyond-
does all of the work, correct. So staff have to collect an application, request from the sheriff's office, a background investigation, which sometimes takes 7 to 14 days. That means the food truck's not operating for 2 weeks in our city while we wait for the results of the background check. Plus there's a cost associated with the background check. And then we would have to have somebody with a little bit of knowledge and training on verifying what's a legitimate state cater license look like. What does a legitimate state certification from the Department of Agriculture look like? What is not that anyone would alter documents to get in and sell food out of a mobile food unit, but it's nice to be assured that you know what you're looking for. Whereas that is all put onto the county.
You didn't get Ham Lake then, right?
I did not.
Okay, because I'm thinking of other taco trucks in Blaine, maybe Ham Lake.
When I did a search, I don't think anything came up for the city of Ham Lake, which tells me they probably don't regulate it. They allow the county to regulate it.
Thank you.
So, we're just trying to come in line with Anoka County / the state?
Correct.
So you say that there's a 21-day limit at a particular space, correct?
The unit can operate no more than 21 days annually at any one place unless it is operated at a site of and in conjunction with a permanent business license under Chapter 157.
Sure, thank you. With that being said, it seems kind of absurd to me, but how are they keeping track of how long a food truck is at a particular location?
That is a good
Because
question.
if you've
They
got
chalk the
21
wheels.
days, it's like,
There's gonna be somebody keeping
do you have to
track.
specify which location in the Anoka County application that specifies where you're gonna be for those 21 days? So that they can actually check up on it? And, I mean, you know, I suppose they
Page-
could always use the
page-
cops to check that out.
Page 2 of the application,
Yeah.
date, time, address.
Okay, so they actually are having to provide the location of
Location.
where they're gonna be for those 21 days.
Correct.
And
So-
each 21 days is a fee then.
Right, so then, 21 days comes up, and, Councilman Ryder says, hey, you know what, I really like that food truck, can we just keep it there for another 21 days? And I don't blame you, by the way, I can appreciate good food. What's to stop us from just going ahead and saying, yeah, you can be there for longer? I mean, are we beholden then to Anoka County?
So in their application, it does state that to discuss a plan review and license requirements, if you intend on operating longer or do not meet license eligibility, my guess is they have flexibility.
Okay. I don't have any major objections to this, other than to point out just a couple of things. I know that I've met a few owners who have started with a food truck, and the normal progression is then to turn that food truck into a brick and mortar restaurant. And my feeling is, you know, that's kind of the general gist of wanting to keep the limit as to how long you can stay at any one place. To me, I wouldn't mind if it was longer, to be honest with you, because I think establishing yourself as a good food place is paramount to doing that. But that then they would have the opportunity to make enough money with their food truck to then be able to move into a brick and mortar place. The other point that I would like to make on that point is we are allowing somebody to come in as a mobile food truck, right? Who is most likely not a resident or a business partner of the city of East Bethel. And therefore, every day that truck sits there is competition for businesses that we already have in East Bethel, which is places like Highway 65 Pub and Grub and Hidden Haven Golf Course and those type of places. And I realize
Right,
that
without
those
paying
are,
taxes.
exactly, that they are paying taxes. I realize that for those current businesses that are in East Bethel, a food truck is not necessarily a direct challenge to someone eating there. I mean, to me, it's more of a fast food type challenge. But I'm merely pointing those out, that those should be considerations that we consider. But on the whole, I guess I don't have any major objections to the changes that are being considered, which is to follow state and county regulations.
Which seem to strike a pretty good balance between all the different factors that we've looked at, including the 21 days, given conflicting interests, I guess.
I would love to see it extended so that somebody could be there seasonally, but I don't want to see extra burden on the city staff either. I mean, that's, to me, is a major concern here.
I share that opinion.
So, do we have any recommendation? Anyone
Are we
want to make
supposed to
one?
make a recommendation?
Yeah, if you would, make a recommendation to either forward the ordinance amendment on to the council as a positive recommendation, or a denial, if you will, that you want to see some change, or you're not interested in having a food truck ordinance at all, other than what we currently have, which is the definition of a food truck.
I make a motion to forward the ordinance as written to council for approval to be added to our ordinances.
Second.
Okay. So, any further discussion?
I'd just say I'm gonna vote against, not because I don't agree with what you're trying to do. It's just the seasonality aspect. I do feel like it should be extended, and 21 days is too limiting for this type of business.
You could always, since we're still in discussion.
Yeah, we are.
Forgive me. If you feel that way, Commissioner, then why don't you propose an amendment? Or do you feel that you're just fine with the way that it is now? I mean, if you're not happy with how this is, and you're gonna vote no because of the time limit, would that not be a reason for you to want to make an amendment to add that to the recommendation? Or is the conversation here enough to get it up to city council?
Well, I just heard the motion was as written, and so I didn't feel like I could make an amendment. But if I can make an amendment,
Yes,
it will
you
be
can.
Yeah,
to
you can.
extend this to a seasonal application.
You're making a motion to make the amendment.
I'd make a motion to make an amendment to make this a seasonal, are we calling it a permit?
It would need to be a permit at that point. We would also need to then amend the fee schedule, and we would then need to figure out how we're gonna collect the revenue and an application process
How are you
and.
defining seasonal?
Okay, so I'm not for enforcement or adding enforcement.
What I might
to-
recommend is there are only a short window of time left this season before it might be too cold to do any food trucks. Exploring this next spring, and if it becomes burdensome on food trucks next spring, we could always look at an amendment to the 21-day permit at that point as well, as an alternative solution.
Cambridge had seasonal up to 6 months or an annual. Okay, is there a second?
We already did a motion, or you're talking
Yeah,
about.
There's a motion on the floor. There has been no
Okay.
second.
Yeah.
Everybody just asked a bunch of questions
Okay.
without really thinking it through. So,
So
I will second the motion. I'll second the motion for more discussion. How about that?
Okay.
Do we need to vote on the motion I made, or?
I don't think so. I mean,
No,
we're still talking about Joe's.
Forgive me, point of order. Once there is a addition to the original motion, that original motion gets put on hold until this gets resolved.
Okay.
Once this gets resolved, then we would go back to the original motion. So at this point, he's made a motion to amend, and I've seconded
To discuss.
to get it into discussion.
I got it, okay.
And so
Any discussion?
we need to,
I'm gonna need clarification. We don't have an original permit amount, we don't permit it, but we're gonna, then you wanna offer a seasonal permit. What would you guys like to see for a fee to go with a seasonal permit?
Right, just for conversation's sake and to extend this out. I think Wyoming has a good condition, 6 to 12 month license for 150. I think the term should be that all we do is verify that they have a state health sticker. And if they don't verify that, then they can't apply. But that really just gets us to where we need to be on making sure that they are food safety certified. We contact them once a year, and then they pay a nominal fee for that administrative processing, which is $150.
So our existing code currently states a mobile food unit is a food and beverage service establishment that is vehicle mounted, yada yada definition as we continue on, that can operate no more than 21 days. That is in our existing code. Are you then thinking we should add a seasonal Or should we go back and scrap this and start all over again the third time? And come up with our own food truck ordinance?
I'm just trying to be collaborative. I'm really opposed to making this change, but in the, I guess, the spirit of, you know, finding common ground, that's what I'm trying to do here, so.
And Joe, I agree with your spirit actually on this one very much so, but I'm going to vote against your amendment, just because I do think it needs to stay to whatever Anoka County has, so that we don't have staff time going through background checks and doing enforcement.
I agree.
Yeah.
The original recommendation is doing what we need to do to get the trucks into our city, allow them here for the people that want to use them, and not put any stress on staff or anybody else.
That's my feeling too. I'd be happy to extend it if it were not a whole shift in what the staff has to do to accommodate that.
Can I take a vote on Joe's amendment? Or do you have some more discussion?
Or I'll
think-
retract my amendment, that way we don't have to.
You sure?
Yep.
Okay. Do you have anything you want to say?
Well, we were, kind of got lost in the amendment there.
There was a motion, his motion.
He reclarified the motion and was interrupted by the community development director because he wanted a clarification, and then we never had a second, and then we discussed it from there. He has since retracted that motion, so we're kind of back to the original motion.
Okay.
But since we're already on this topic, I'm going to continue with it. So, I mean, if we were talking about a seasonal license, my question to the commission would be, what time frame do you think that we should make
That's what
it?
I said. What is seasonal?
So is that 365 days a year, or is that only during the summer months?
Depends on the type of food.
Well, again, I mean, you know, now if you have a vendor who comes into the ice arena and starts selling hot chocolate
Right,
and,
exactly.
or, you know, something along those lines, then of course now you're talking about in the wintertime too. So, if we are gonna change it, we would have to clarify the time, and then of course, we would have to, like you had mentioned, Aaron, we would have to either strike or revise the current ordinance to say that from the 21 days, or add to it and say it's 21 days, and if you wanted to have a seasonal license, which is X amount of days, then we could do that. You know, your question of cost for the license, I think, is something that we could definitely put up for discussion, and maybe that's something that should be dealt with later. And, I mean, council could always come back and revisit this at a later time if they wanted to. I mean, couldn't we just make it 0 for the license? That we wouldn't charge them anything other than providing, say, what has been suggested is a bill of health from the Minnesota Board of Health?
That doesn't match the, or require the background check. That doesn't require the inspection.
Correct.
That would put that back on staff to have to do those things. If we're offering
Why would staff have to do that? Forgive me, but I'm gonna ask the question.
Sure.
Why would staff have to do those checks if we're just gonna say, here's your license for 6 months, but we just require that you give us the certification from the Minnesota Board of... I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm really curious.
I think in terms of regulation, your own citizens' protections, you're going to want to know whether there's a registered sex offender operating an ice cream truck in your parking lot.
Yep.
And without doing a background check and just saying, well, you have a sticker from the state, good enough, we'll see you later, you're opening yourself up to some providing opportunity for nefarious things to happen if that is the scenario. That would be one reason I could think of why you would want to do a background check on whoever is operating a food truck in your community.
So with that statement in mind, what difference does it make whether it's 6 months or 21 days? Could we not have somebody under our current ordinance that we could have a sex offender who's running around in an ice cream truck
That
in the
is
city
why,
of East Bethel?
That is why we're looking at the ordinance right now, is because somebody brought it up saying your ordinance is unclear, you have no regulation, what are you going to do about this?
Right?
So my review was, yes, you're right, we need clarification. The county will do the background check. The county will do the requirements. If we're gonna ask for a different licensing requirement than what the county does, then we gotta come up with our own establishment licensing process.
Okay, so then what about this? You're required to have the 21-day license from Anoka County, and then you can continue with our license for X amount of days / months after that expires. In which case, you know that Anoka County's already done the work for you. You're just continuing to allow them to do their business within the city on a continuing basis for a certain amount of time. Now, granted, could that person then be committing those crimes in the meantime and still be in the city? That's a possibility, but I think it would be greatly reduced if you went on that perspective that whoever was going to work here in the city of East Bethel had to start with the 21-day licensing from Anoka County. Could that not work?
But then they're violating the terms of the license with Anoka if we grant them an extension, because I don't see how that could happen. It's a clearly defined period of time that Anoka grants the license. Then we're saying, okay, you don't have to follow that anymore, because we're going to give you more time, as long as 6 months or whatever it is. So they're in violation at that point, unless we have an arrangement with Anoka County that they don't have to enforce that or something. We're letting the food vendor violate the terms of their permit.
I think after 21 days, their permit with Anoka County would no longer be valid.
And they could apply for another one.
Certainly
They would
can.
have to,
Right.
right?
And it also, as I pointed out, there is a statement in here that says to discuss plan review and licensing requirements if you intend on operating longer, to contact them.
Okay. My apologies. I don't intend
No, it's
to
good.
add an amendment. I was genuinely curious about how to flesh out what the possibilities were.
I think it's great discussion, actually. So we're at the point where,
Any other
is there more
discussion?
discussion? If not, I think we'll call a vote on Glenn's original
Are we
motion.
back to the original motion?
Yep. That we would recommend the ordinance as presented here. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Okay, that passed.
Let the
Thank you.
council see it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Alrighty, I think we have an update from our city council liaison.
Bob DeRoche, City Council. What's going on? Boy, a long night.
Hey, Bob.
Baffles me how these meetings can go longer, not as long as a city council meeting.
But they're important, right?
Sure.
They are.
If you stay on point,
Mhm.
but irregardless. Last night we did pass that long-awaited storage container ordinance, between Councilman Miller and they hammered things out, got it squared away. Put the Anoka County Sheriff's contract on tabled until the next meeting. It's not a matter of, it's gonna get passed, so that's not even, but there's some things we're looking into. And I think, the comments that I get is, people are pretty happy that we do a lot of research and we do a lot of discussion on the city council. It's not a rubber stamp, it's not a bobblehead decision. We look into things, we ask a lot of questions. We're fortunate that we've got Kevin Lewis running as the mayor. I mean, the guy he is definitely a corporate money numbers guy. And he articulates himself rather well. Some of this stuff, maybe a couple of years ago, would have just rubber stamped, boom, it's passed. And that's kind of why we got in the situation we were in. Other than that, there's not much going on. No work meeting.
I have a question. Do you know about the discussion about non-sworn officers? Was that just a CSO, or was it more of a volunteer squad that had been discussed, or?
Well, CSOs have always been a part. And prior to when Wanda McLaurin and Steve Voss, whatever, they eliminated the CSOs. And they did an awful lot of work in the city and left the other deputies to do their thing. What I did was ask to have the Lieutenant Peters explain to people so they understand. CSOs are just that. They are not sworn officers. And to put them out there and to try and fill in for time or whatever, that would not be a good idea.
Yeah, he did a great explanation,
What's
I
that?
thought. I said I thought he did a great explanation at
Oh,
the meeting.
People can hear it from me, but when they hear it from him, they're gonna hear the same thing, only he's the guy wearing the badge saying, look, yeah, we'll look into it. And at one point, the CSOs used to ride with the deputies. When I first came in office in 2011, a lot of the deputies were CSOs delivering the packets out to our house. And so I've kind of watched them guys come up. We're pretty fortunate with the East Bethel deputies. They really do like this city. I mean, they go beyond, over and beyond, and they know the citizens, they know what's going on, they know the troubled areas. And so they understand to cut back 4 hours on coverage just isn't, in my mind, a real feasible thing to do. And again, a CSO, I mean, these guys, they can't carry a gun, they don't understand the laws. Can you imagine how many lawsuits? In fact, that's one reason why we, back in 2011, had thought about community police between St. Francis, us, Ham Lake, and Oak Grove. And by the time we got done figuring out the finances, yeah, it may initially be cheaper, but we said, okay, so we hire a least expensive deputy. Him and his partner go out and they get in trouble. We got a $2-3 million lawsuit. Did you save any money? You still got to have cars. For every patrolman out there, I'm not sure exactly what the numbers are, but you've always got to have a backup. You got to have someone there to back them up in case there's medical. Maybe they're off on vacation. So for us to be able to foot that bill, it's just not going to work. So we're looking at, the mayor wanted to look into what's the feasibility of having them in for 4 hours a day. Well, what's the crooks going to do? Hey, the CSOs are on between these hours, unless you just didn't tell them. So that was the whole thing behind that. And again, the sheriff's contract, yeah, we could have rubber stamped it, passed it, and sent it down, but part of the job, to me, on the city council, you're not dealing with your own money. This is the taxpayers' money. And everybody's got budgets at home. And if things are tight and things aren't going quite right, you gotta tighten your budget. You don't spend more money. And if there's waste somewhere, well, then you have to pick that out and weed through it and say, look, no, it's not just as usual. We need to figure out, how do we do this, and we can do it cheaper, and it's not an unlimited pocketbook. And if somebody don't like it, well, then donate 10 million to the city and let us pay the bills.
Okay.
Anybody else?
No, I really appreciate your comments.
Well, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see ya.
Okay. Well, for those that are still sitting here in the audience, I want to thank you, those that gave input tonight. You know, it was, I think we spent an hour on that issue. That might seem like a long time, but it's really important, so thank you for coming. Okay, any other things anyone wants to bring up? Okay, then,
Will we adjourn?
I think we have to have a motion for that, don't we?
She did.
Motion to adjourn.
And where's the second?
A second.
Okay, all in favor of adjourning, say
Yeah,
aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that meeting's closed.
Good job, Sharon. You did great.
My council looks the same there, just before I heard it.
Okay.
What's that?
Well, that went pretty good.
Filling-
Yeah, they went all right.